we go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Oh, hang on. I need to get into. There we go.
You're right. Good.
Yeah.
This is kind of an interim one. We just the two of us this time. We've got we're going to have a guest at the next one. Very special guest. We won't say who that's going to be yet, but that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But we were just getting a bit worried about having so many records we wanted to show. The next video will be about 3 hours long. So we're going to kick off with just a duo this time.
Yeah.
And the principle is we're just playing stuff, not necessarily new stuff, just stuff we've been listening to during the lockdown. Both of us, I think, listen to a lot of music. So we're going to fill in some of the gaps. Now we're going to start off with something I have bought, actually, in the last couple of weeks, which is Felipe Wynn, who has featured quite a lot in our videos and as part of the Spinners. This is his solo record called, what was it called, actually? Windjamming, which was on Uncle Jan, which was on the George Clinton label.
Wow.
I'm looking for this quite a long time, actually. I mean, I picked it up for very little money, actually. It's great. But it's got one amazing, it's really a one-track album, this one, actually. Most of it's okay. But there's an amazing track called Never Gonna Tell It, which is an old Funkadelic song from Tales of Kid Funkadelic. And it's given an epic treatment. It's about 15 minutes long, the track on this record. Starts off sounding a little bit like the original Funkadelic version, then goes into what sounds almost like knee-deep sung by a gospel choir. For about 5 minutes, and then you've got about 5 minutes of shredding from Michael Hampton at the end of it. So it's an absolute epic track, actually. So worth picking up. One of the very few records that came out on Uncle James. Sweatband was another one.
Yes, Sweatband.
And the P-Funk All-Stars, and that was about it, actually. It was a short label, but definitely worth picking up for that one track. Absolutely epic. Kind of definitely in the knee-deep kind of vibe to it.
Well, talking of the one track recording, this is a 7-inch that I picked up about 2 weeks ago by I think they're called The Perfect Circle. Know very little about these guys. It was recorded in 1977. There's 2 tracks. There's The Perfect Circle, but the track that I absolutely love is The Hands of Time. I think they maybe did one album, which is incredibly rare and hard to get hold of. I think this is on Barely Breaking Even, or no, it's on Dynamite Cuts. Anyway, yeah, it's one of those tracks. It's a bit like, oh gosh, maybe LA Boppers or somebody like that. It's very funky, but there's a kind of jazzy vibe and some great sort of harmony vocals as well. So yeah,
completely well me, that one. Don't know that
one.
Yeah. Been listening to Sarita a bit recently, actually. And this is the one I've not listened to as much as others, the other two, really, our first two. This is the third one, which came out, again, late 70s, I think, maybe. Yeah, 77. Produced by Leon Ware, this one, except for one track that's produced by Stevie. Sounds very much like a Leon Ware album, but very nice, actually. Really good songs. I think her voice, actually, has improved on this one to the first two. So, yeah, really, really kind of typical Leon Ware record, actually, but really there's some really good songs on it and some good stuff from Sarita. Usual kind of top rope, Chuck Rainey-ish, James Gadsden-ish band there as well.
Now I have to do an apology shout out to 6-inch pianist John, because I did a big thank you to Mellow Man Lawrence for the Janis record last time, and of course it was actually John who had shown it. Anyway, I can't remember, one of those two, I think, had shown this record, which is Tamiko Jones and an album called Cloudy. And I've really been digging into this. This is, the connection is Tommy McCook, who was responsible for Bump and Hustle Music, which is an absolute classic tune. And Tommy McCook didn't seem to do a huge amount, but what he did do was amazing. And he's responsible for the arrangements and writing some of this, and he's a keyboard player as well. And it's mainly kind of cover versions, and she's got quite a sort of sultry, almost kind of cocktaily kind of voice, but it is still soulful, and there's some wonderful playing, and there's some great covers. She does a great version of Cloudy, the Average White Band tune. She also does a great version of Creeping, great version of Feel Like Making Love. Yeah, so I hadn't, this is definitely a VC discovery, and big thanks to whoever it was who shared it. I'm sure they'll tell us in the comments.
Tommy McCook had a great band as well, about the same time as Bump and Hustle came out. I'm trying to remember the name of the band. I'll try and remember it before the end of the video, actually. Again, very much in that kind of slightly more stretched out kind of funk thing.
Yeah, they sort of, it's a really nice kind of hybrid of soul, funk and jazz.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Well, I haven't got a connection with that at all, really. But so the next one up. Oh, let's show these actually. I mean, something I've been. This is kind of a bunch of singles, really, masquerading as an album. Really, just been listening to lots and lots of Prince 12-inch singles from around the time of Around the World in a Day, kind of that kind of time, and they're just great music hidden away in all these, actually. And I think, you know, there's still you can still get hold of most of these for reasonable amounts of money, but I've noticed they've started to creep up in price. So I mean, I think if you basically find any kind of 12-inch around the time, for anything from kind of 1999 through to Love Sexy, really, just pick them up, really, because there's some really great music on them. So stuff like Pop Life and America and Raspberry Beret and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's just kind of, I just noticed they've just started to creep up in price on Discogs, so it's worth grabbing them, I think, before they all start to disappear.
Well, talking of 12-inch singles, I rediscovered this box, which is the Jazzanova remixes 1997 to 2000, 5 12-inches with a whole heap of great remixes. So Jazzanova, they kind of really interesting mix of sort of electronica, broken beat, jazz, sort of fusiony, you know, just really great rhythms actually. And often I think the remix is kind of more interesting than the original version. So there's a great remix of Four Heroes, We Who Are Not As Others. There's a great mix of Azimuth's Amazon Adventure,
Which you played on your show, I think, did you?
Which I did play on my show. There's Ian Pooley, What's Your Number? Yeah, there's an Incognito, MJ Cole, Ursula Rucker. Yeah, anyway, just, I think maybe I was given this. I don't remember ever buying this, but yeah, 5 12-inches. And just really sounding great on the 12-inch groove.
Of course, since the last session we had, we've lost Ennio Morricone.
Yes.
And I've kind of been listening to a lot of Ennio Morricone, but also listening to this, which was one of the first John Zorn records that I remember getting, which is called The Big Gundam, which is his version of a whole range of Morricone tunes. Huge influence on Zorn and lots of other people. I was thinking actually that there's a whole period in the UK kind of with people like Massive Attack and Radiohead and Portishead who massively borrowed from Morricone. But this is so this is an album which features lots of people, usual suspects: Bill Frisell, Tim Byrne, Wayne Horowitz, Fred Frith, and all these kind of people. And it's great versions. I mean, Morricone evidently loved this record as well. Great versions of Morricone tunes on here, really nicely done, actually. And it was also really kind of, not quite my first introduction, but one of my first introductions to John Zorn stuff. This came out in 90 something or other. Late 90s, I think. Anyway, on None Such.
And there was a connection there, John, because there is an Ennio Morricone tune which they remix called Balanco. Well, the band's Balanco, Metti una sera a cena.
Great.
So there we go. We actually had a connection there without even realizing. I've also been listening to The Feedback. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I love that song. Yeah.
But the album, there's 3 tracks, and it's kind of like a weird, I don't know, weird sort of psychedelic impro funk.
With completely mad drumming and percussion on it. So
yes, great drumming on it.
Yeah.
So that
was done under. He had a group called The Group, actually, and that was the of experimental musicians. So that came from that kind of source.
Yeah. Well, I guess there is a little bit of a connection. I've dug this out again, which I do remember, I think possibly have shared once before. Rather beautiful packaging. This is Mark Pritchard and Under the Sun. And Mark Pritchard, I hadn't realized, was actually Trouble Man. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, there was quite a nice album called Trouble Man. And
also half of the Jedi Knights, wasn't he, as well, I think.
Right. And yeah, just this is a really great album. Very sort of sonically interesting, very sort of filmic in its scope, and some interesting collaborations. There's BBO and Tom York both feature on this. There's also an amazing track which samples Julie Andrews, which is unexpected. But yeah, really, just really nice. It sort of seemed to have just been the right kind of soundtrack for the moment, actually.
Yeah. It's on Warp, isn't it? That is it on Warp?
It is on Warp, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So thinking about somebody who's kind of, I've been kind of having a whole period of listening to a lot of Mike Cooper records recently as well, going right back to the 70s. He was a kind of almost like a folk blues musician in the 60s and 70s, and started working with some of the free jazz people, and then heavily moved into the improv scene. And since then has been living part of his time in Hawaii, and has got really interested in music from the South Pacific. And this is an extraordinary record called White Shadows in the South Seas, which is a mixture of his amazing kind of guitar playing, but also lots of samples, field recordings, all mixed together. And it's kind of absolutely, I mean, it takes you somewhere completely different, actually, listening to this music. Really, really interesting stuff. He's a very nice guy as well. He's been very, very friendly, kind of ever-present person on the music scene as well. So this came out, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a double vinyl. But it's really a lot of his stuff recently is really interesting and kind of almost uncategorizable, really, just in completely another place. So great guitar, yeah, as I said, real interesting mixture. This came out on, I don't know what the label was this actually. Sacred Summits, I think the label was.
Now, last...
I should say that last one was prompted by a comment in the last section. We had a whole comment, and I've forgotten who left the comments actually, but whoever it was, thank you for that. We had a whole exchange about Mike Cooper, so that prompted this coming out.
We also had a bit of an exchange about William S. Fisher, because Joe Zawinul had sort of collaborated with him on that first solo album. This is a William S. Fisher production. This is Andy Bay and Experience and Judgment. And I guess this would be a kind of early 70s. It's just quite a cosmic album, actually. I think he was very into yoga at this time. Was singing about it quite a bit. But again, quite a nourishing kind of listen at the moment. A great version of Celestial Blues, which kicks it off. And yeah, just some very sort of funky, understated, groove-based songs, but also just kind of interesting to listen to. Kind of, I'm trying to not say spiritual jazz. I'm not really sure what it is, but
it's got a bit of that vibe going. He's got a great voice, I think.
He has got a great voice. Yeah.
There's also a really nice album called Angie Bay and the Bay Sisters, which I think was earlier than that, which is a really nice, came on Prestige, I think, that one.
Yeah, so there's obviously an album he did in the 90s that got a lot of attention. I think where he also did the cover of Riverman by Nick Drake.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people didn't realize he'd been around quite a bit earlier than that.
I think people saw him a bit as being another Terry Callier kind of character.
Right, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely in that kind of, that realm of...
So not talking about spiritual jazz at all. It's such an awkward question. Doesn't get much more... I mean, just an amazing record, this. I haven't played it for quite a long time. It's just a beautiful record, this. And the version of Going Home, which is a spiritual one here, this is Alice Coltrane, obviously, and Lord of Lords, which is the last record she made for Impulse. I mean, just an amazing, I mean, it actually cracks me up, virtually leaves me with a pile of kind of water on the floor, basically, by the end of it, actually, just fantastic. And I think this is the one where she really nailed the combination of kind of strings and also the Indian instruments and the jazz thing on here as well. It's a really good album, this one. So I've been listening to a lot of her recently, actually, and I find that stuff really moving. It's very strange because I haven't got a religious bone in my body, but still somehow or other really gets to you, I think. So yeah, Alice Coltrane.
She's obviously hitting the right vibration, John.
Very much so, yeah, God.
Well, let's show something new. This is a lovely cover. This is, I don't quite know how to pronounce these guys, Kurungbin. I think, which apparently means airways in Thai. And this album's called Mordecai. Now, there's an amazing Tiny Desk concert, one of the ones that they've done since lockdown. And they're just a trio. There's the most beautiful bass player who plays and moves incredibly seductively, and a guitarist and a drummer. And I think this is their third or fourth album. I'd never heard of them before, but I was really intrigued by the Tiny Desk concert and picked up this new album. The first track, First Class, has got a real Roy Ayers vibe to it, actually. A kind of, well, it's almost like Ramp sort of Roy Ayers kind of Daylight vibe.
Daylight, yeah.
Also, it does actually remind me a bit of the Salt albums. There's a sort of certain production sound. Yeah, again, kind of quite sort of filmic and quite sort of moods more than overt songs, but interesting.
The Tiny Desk songs is great, actually. I mean, I'd be surprised if people don't watch those, but they are fantastic. Actually, some great stuff on those.
Well, you can really tell who can actually do it.
Yeah, completely.
In a way, when everything else is stripped away.
While we're keeping in that kind of vibe, I mean, just really sometimes just need to be reminded about Coltrane. Actually, never mind everybody else who came along after him, really. And in the sense, you feel like you're almost going up a notch into another world when you listen to a Coltrane record. And this is his album of duos with Rashid Ali, which is called Interstellar Space, which was, I remember when it came out, actually, it was really kind of startling, actually. So even though he played a lot in duo situations with Elvin Jones, having a whole album. And it's actually kind of not really a very free record. It's quite a structured record, actually. Everyone said this is just improvisation, but you can hear a lot of structure in this stuff as well. So this came out on Impulse. I think it was recorded just before he died and came out shortly after he died. And kind of a bit of a classic, really. And there were some tracks which ended up on other records from this session as well, but I think this is the one to get.
I just picked this pressing up of Empyrean Isles, Herbie Hancock, which features the Tony Williams, Ron Carter, Freddie Hubbard lineup. I mean, obviously, everybody knows Cantaloupe Island, which in many respects is the least interesting track on this album. I love Aliloquy Valley, actually. It's really a classic tune, and The Egg is kind of quite out there. Quite sort of weirdly sort of quite experimental at times, although it's known for sort of a track that's sort of been sampled to death. But this is a very nice pressing. It's one of the audiophile grade 180 gram re-releases, and ended up getting it from Belgium, I think. But yeah, it sounds really, really nice. And
yeah, Liloquy Valley, wasn't that was sampled, wasn't it, by Tribe Called Quest, I think, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, which is I think those two are really, those early Herbie records. I mean, we're kind of where he never, even though he played some of that stuff afterwards with the acoustic bands, he never went back to that kind of style again. Actually, it's great. Just thinking of great drummers, actually, this is something which has been playing quite a lot recently. This was an early Gary Burton record on RCA called Country Roads and Other Places, which has kind of also got a very strong kind of country folky element to it as well, which kind of shows that, you know, a lot of people have been doing that recently, but he was doing it quite a long time ago in a great band with Steve Swallow. And the thing I like about this record more than anything is the drum sound, Roy Haynes' drum sound on it. Just beautiful sounding kind of recording, actually, just incredibly crisp sounding kind of drums. And the whole recording is very, very spacious. It sounds very different to how recording went a few years later, actually. But it's got some really good compositions on it. It's got and On the Third Day, which is a Mike Gibbs tune. Yeah, really nice record, actually, from that kind of time.
Well, this will be a surprise for you, John. You weren't expecting to see him pop up, were you?
You sent me a Bob Dylan record.
So I'm sure most people in the States will have no idea who this good-looking young man is. This is David Essex, and this is his, I think it's his first solo album. Definitely not one to buy on the strength of the cover. This was it's actually all David Essex original tunes. I first saw David Essex when I was about 10, and he was appearing as Jesus in Godspell opposite Jeremy Irons.
Mm.
And yeah, I was so taken by that performance, I kind of nearly sort of, got confirmed. Actually, I was following the way of the Lord briefly, but this is it's produced, arranged, and conducted by Jeff Wayne, and the production is just fabulous. It's got some amazing arrangements. It's got some great session players. So Herbie Flowers is on the bass and Chris Spedding's on the guitar. And there's actually there's a two or three just really unusual tunes. Window, Stardust, and amazingly something called Good Old Rock and Roll. But this was in my 100 most unhip albums book that I was talking about a couple of videos ago. And so this can be picked up for about 50p basically. But there's two or three really nicely produced unusual tracks that are in that kind of that rock on vibe, which was a very weird kind of dubby sound that no one else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my first jobs, I worked as a petrol pump attendant in America at the gas station. And the guy I worked with actually played with David Essex's touring band. And he got sacked by David Essex, and then joined Leo Sayer's touring band and got sacked by Leo Sayer as well. So he obviously was not a great guitarist, I think.
Right.
But he got sacked by about 5 different bands but still managed to get the gig somehow or other.
The first Leo Sayer album is also in that book.
Is it? Yeah, it would be, I think.
Yeah,
definitely. So absolutely no connection between David Essex and Power Tools.
No, you couldn't get further apart, John.
We're about to get a new Bill Frisell album in a couple of weeks' time, which has been really looking forward to. But this digging right back actually back into the 80s, I think mid-80s. Power Tools was a one-off band with Bill Frisell, Melvin Gibbs on bass, and Ronald Sean Jackson on drums. And they just made this one record and did one tour of the UK, and I got to see them actually at the Crawley Jazz Festival in the south of England. And this is just a great band, actually. I mean, really unusual sounding. None of them ever played anything like this again, actually. It was just a real unusual one-off combination of talents. And it's got some great compositions on this. There's an amazing song called, two songs, one called Howard Beach Memoirs, which was about a notorious kind of attack on the black community in Howard Beach, and also a track called Unscientific Americans as well. And it's just really interesting music, actually. It's just strange how, they never went. I think afterwards they did reform with Pete Cozy from Mars Time playing guitar.
Okay.
Bill, but didn't last very long in that kind of format. But yeah, just a great one-off actually, and the best Melvin Gibbs and the best Ronald Sean Jackson I've ever heard actually on this. Really good stuff.
Wow.
Bit of a classic.
Have I missed? Have I supposed to show one more record?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've got 2 more records here actually.
Have you?
I mean, were you going to show 10 or 7?
7.
Oh, I thought we were going to go 10. Oh, right.
So I have shown my 7.
You have shown your 7, yeah.
I have.
We're done then in that case, yeah.
I can show a book, John.
You can show a book, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can show this book, Gennaro Nierenberg. I'm sure this isn't top of the bestsellers at the moment. It's called Divergent Mind, and it's written from the perspective of somebody who is neurodiverse, and it's just feels. It was actually our mutual friend Robin who told me about this book, I feel like we're absolutely at a moment where we need some different perspectives on how the world could be. So I've only just started it. I only started it yesterday. It arrived yesterday. But it looks like it's going to be an interesting read for the current times.
Definitely get hold of that one. Okay, my book. A couple of sessions ago, Mark showed a book by David Toope, which was the new book, which is called, I can't remember what it's called actually, but it's a very heavy duty book actually. It's kind of quite hard. It's quite a hard read, I think. A very interesting read, but a hard read. This one is in a sense, his autobiography. David Toope's a music writer and musician in the UK, kind of influential kind of figure, and I guess in a kind of almost like a Brian Eno-ish kind of way. And this is just his autobiography, which is really easy to read. basically goes through different phases of him playing and producing people's work. Also talks a lot about he was a journalist for a long time, writing about music. So it's kind of a lot of stuff about soul music in here, a lot of stuff about kind of experimental stuff. Just a really easy read, actually, and certainly kind of diverting, to say the least, actually.
You're right. The book I showed is not an easy read at all.
Very heavy duty. I mean, I knew most of the stuff in it, and I found it quite heavy to read.
Yeah.
This is not, and it's called Flutter Echo, and it's published by Thurston Moore's publishing house, his new publishing house he set up.
Cool.
I've got 3 records here I haven't shown. So I'll leave them for next time.
Leave them for next time, John. Well, this is probably a refreshingly slightly shorter video.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much appreciating the encouragement and the comments from everybody. And, yeah, very nice to hear from everybody, and lovely to see Secco Funk's return to the VC.
Absolutely.
And I noticed John Coltrane 68 seems to be posting a lot at the moment, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, as we'll be back 2 weeks from now with a very, very special guest.
Yeah.
All our guests have been special, but this one definitely hasn't been seen on the VC for quite a long time.
Yeah. So not to be missed.
Not to be missed. Tune in.
So take care, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Oh, and also we should say both John and I now have got radio shows.
Yeah.
I've had 2 for a while, but John is also on one of the stations I'm on now.
Definitely. And I'm just trying to sort out my Mixcloud. I lost my Mixcloud profile. I couldn't find it.
And what's your show called, John?
It's called Sound Unbound.
Great. Well, maybe I can share a link, or can I not yet? No.
Yeah, you can share a link to the show on there, but I haven't got my Mixcloud sorted out yet, so I need to do that.
Good. Well, stay well, everybody. And yeah, let's see where we are in 2 weeks' time.
Definitely.
Okay. Hang on.
We're into extended time here.